And this is Panorama. Earlier today, Sudan's president was accused at the International Criminal Court of committing genocide against his own people in Darfur. Yet weapons are still pouring into the region, fueling a conflict in which some 300,000 people have died.
The captain of the anti-NOF aircraft told the commander of the military operation on the ground, "I don't want anyone left between here and the border, rebels and civilians."
The Sudanese government has an arsenal of Chinese weapons, but nobody's ever proven that new Chinese military equipment has ended up in Darfur in breach of a UN arms embargo until now.
Is this the first categorical proof?
Yes.
The countdown to the Olympics in China has begun, with officials there braced for protests on Tibet and human rights. But it's claims that China has put its thirst for oil ahead of the lives of Africans that we focus on tonight. 130 athletes, some of them headed for Beijing, have signed a letter calling for a truce in Darfur. Steven Spielberg pulled out of advising the Games because he said his conscience would not allow it. The connection? Chinese weapons fueling a vicious conflict the world can't seem to stop.
Through the wilds of Chad in North Africa, back towards the land of killings, Darfur. For 5 years, these deserts have been stained by the worst atrocities known to man. But that's changed nothing. We're driving along Darfur's border, and last night we heard heavy fighting just about 10 miles away. I was here right at the start of the conflict when the world had barely heard of Darfur, but now it's been called a genocide. The atrocities have been catalogued and exposed. So I never would have imagined I'd be here 5 years later saying the killings are still going on, but they are, and the death toll has now risen to an estimated 300,000 people. This is what Darfur looks like now. Hundreds of villages have been burnt across a vast area, all but erased from the face of the earth. The government of Sudan has done this, together with the Arab Janjaweed militia it uses to help fight this dirty war. Sudan's Arab-dominated government is based in Khartoum. Darfur, largely made up of black Africans, lies hundreds of miles away in Sudan's west. Plagued by poverty, Darfur's people have long felt marginalized. 5 years ago, they rose up and rebelled. The government responded ferociously. At the height of it, 10,000 people were dying a month, and it's not over yet. In February this year, this is what the government did to a whole section of West Darfur. The village that stood here was called Gosmino. These were the homes of 3,000 people. Air power and ground forces obliterated the place. This was not like the sporadic fighting more often seen now. This onslaught was ominously similar to the attacks at the start of this conflict, the attacks that led America to call this a genocide against black Africans. But much of the military hardware that's devastating Darfur is not Sudanese. So who is arming the killers? Sudan's government publicly paraded its military might in December. We had these pictures analyzed. These are T-96 Chinese battle tanks.
China is a hugely significant supplier of small arms and light weapons, as well as medium to heavy equipment right across the range up to aircraft.
The UN imposed the current arms embargo on Darfur in 2005. It's a fairly weak document. It allows foreign countries to send military equipment like this to most of Sudan. But it strictly requires these nations to stop this equipment from going on into Darfur. What's never been known is if China is violating the embargo. We've spent months investigating China's secretive arms trade, and the trail we followed has led us to this remote border point on the edge of the Sahara. The rebels up here say they've captured Chinese equipment, but to see it, we have to cross into Darfur. My past reports on the Darfur conflict caused the Sudanese authorities to ban me from the country for several years, and it's still not safe for me to enter Sudan. A panorama team took a camera across. Our team did not include anyone from Sudan. We made contact with the rebels' representatives in Europe and set up the rendezvous. The destination, a remote mountainous plateau in western Darfur called Jebel Moon. Jebel Moon's name means an impenetrable fortress, a safe place. But it's not safe here anymore. The rebels our team sneaked in with use these hills as a hideout. These men, they're called the Gem Rebels, are fighting Sudan's government, whose forces were very nearby. Sudan's government stands accused of trying to eliminate Darfur's black Africans. These rebels are deeply committed to the fight. They want some self-rule here. Some rebel factions are brutal and carry their own sins. We knew if these men could get us to the equipment we'd been tracking, it would answer the long-standing question. Is China actively arming Sudan's government in Darfur? And here, finally, in the remote reaches of Jebel Moon, we found the answer.
We captured this Dongfeng truck and another like it in the same battle.
Tura Masik, a local Gem commander, showed us a model 2005 Dongfeng military truck produced in China. A truck from a batch the UN has been trying to find here for years. We verified that it had indeed been captured from government forces through testimony. The rebels had taken off its gun to use it for themselves.
The Sudanese army put their heavy guns on the Dongfeng trucks.
The truck's markings showed clearly it was manufactured in July 2005, after the current UN arms embargo was imposed. The rebels had earlier taken our camera and filmed another Dongfeng truck they said they'd captured. It had the same markings. It too was mounted with an anti-aircraft gun, this one Chinese. These guns can fire high-caliber shells designed to cut through armor. They've been used here as instruments of mass burning. They cause terrible wounds. From detailed research, we're almost certain that the truck we found played a key part in an attack last December on a town called Surba. We traveled to a distant part of eastern Chad. This town is called Birak. Amongst thousands of refugees, we tracked down witnesses who had seen the Dongfeng truck as it moved in on Surba, firing its gun.
It goes boo 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 like that. The sound, it's like rain. Boo 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 like that.
Eyewitnesses saw one hut take a direct hit from the truck's gun. An intense wave of heat instantly set all the huts around up in flames.
We saw a Dongfeng truck. Its gun started firing. People began screaming. The shooting continued until the houses were burning. The woman was burned on her legs. Her body had a bullet hole that went from her chest to her back.
One woman was burnt alive. 2 others were badly disfigured by their wounds. These Dongfeng military trucks arrived in Port Sudan straight from the factory in China in August 2005. The gun on the truck we filmed was mounted later. A UN panel of arms experts carefully pieced together the story. There were 212 Dongfeng trucks in the shipment. Since 2005, the UN's efforts to track these trucks down in Darfur have been blocked. E.J. Hogendorm was on the UN panel that tried to find them.
We had no specific access to Government of Sudan Army stores. We were not allowed to take down factory codes or model numbers or registration numbers, et cetera, to verify these kinds of things.
We showed him our evidence. This is a close-up of the model number on the truck. I'd like you to compare that to the number in your UN report. Can you verify that this is the same, this is from the same batch of trucks, that these are the trucks you were looking for?
That it's the same batch, or that it's a truck from the same batch.
So what does this say to you?
What it certainly indicates is that those trucks were imported after the imposition of the arms embargo, which forbids those kinds of transfers.
So is this the first categorical proof that you've seen that Chinese military equipment has gone into Darfur since the arms embargo was put in place?
Yes.
In your view, is this a violation of the arms embargo by China?
It is a violation of the arms embargo. The transfer happened after the embargo was in place in 2005, and it's clear that the Chinese have not taken any measures to ensure that that equipment is not moved into the Darfur region or that it's not used for serious violations of human rights.
In the past, China has said it has taken measures. It says it's told Sudan's government that Chinese weapons must not be used in Darfur. But Sudan's government openly says it'll send military equipment where it likes. Equipment that's used in mass killings. Legally, we were told China is not off the hook.
It's an empty measure to take the assurances from a partner who clearly has no intention of abiding by the resolution.
Over the years of Darfur's festering crisis, its civilians have been systematically hunted, not just from the ground, but from the air. Villagers also talk about fighter jets that streak through, firing their weapons with devastating precision. No one has ever firmly established who supplies and maintains the fighter jets that are used in Darfur, but we've unearthed new evidence. The rebels took our team deeper inside the Jebel Moon Mountains. Thousands of people fled into these hills seeking refuge during the government onslaught in early February. They've scattered now. Their attackers pursued them here. This place is called Bebe. On February 19th, the government used fighter jets here. The gouged earth evidence of the aerial bombing. Our team found large pieces of shrapnel spread out across the area. Kaltam Abakar Mohammed's house was burnt down last year. She took refuge in Bebe. That February morning, she heard the fighting. She grabbed her 7 children and ran. A terrible screeching sound tore overhead.
Something that looked like an eagle came towards us.
The fighter jet unleashed 2 bombs. In front of her, 3 of her children were cut to pieces. One of her girls was 5. Her boy was 8.
My daughter and son were hit in the back of the head. One girl was hit in the neck. Her head was cut off. Another was hit in the back and through her breast.
We wanted to find out which type of aircraft had killed Kaltam's children. We got access to this satellite image of Nyala Airport in South Darfur. It was taken on June 18th. These are Chinese Fantan fighter jets, or A-5s. Panorama visited Nyala and identified them on the ground. With confidential military assistance, we've established that Fantans were flying from here regularly in February. They were taking off on missions and heading west. Bebe lies in the west. Our investigations indicate that these are the only type of fighter jets that have been based in Darfur in the last 7 months. It's believed the Fantans came to Sudan before the arms embargo was imposed. But a series of photos of the Fantans we've acquired, these were taken last year, show them in Darfur being serviced. The embargo prohibits foreign servicing. We tracked down Chris Dietrich, another former member of a UN panel of experts. He spent months investigating these planes in Darfur last year.
The aircraft will be sold as part of a larger package, and the more profitable part of the package usually is the training of air crews and the training of maintenance personnel, as well as all associated spare parts.
Does Sudan have the capability to service these aircraft itself?
It has the capability to perform light servicing, but once you start dealing with the avionics, then you need foreign trained technicians. And China actually having sold these aircraft to Sudan, then you could presume that any technicians would indeed be part of that contract and from China.
We were told by a military source we can't name that these Fan-10 aircraft looked like they'd been serviced in the last few weeks. These are called K-8s. They too are Chinese aircraft. They were imported to Khartoum in 2006 as the war in Darfur was in full swing. They're designed to train fighter pilots. We've been told by our military source that China is currently training Sudan's Fan-10 pilots. A second source, well placed within the UN, backed this up.
This is the typical trainer. Once you graduate from this, you can fly the Fan-10.
We've been very reliably told that Sudanese pilots are being trained by China. Does that match with what you were able to find out?
Absolutely. Any sale of aircraft or any military equipment of this capacity, you would have to have the sale involve trainers.
The terms of the embargo cover not only just a supply of weapons, military vehicles, paramilitary equipment, it also covers training, any technical assistance. So training of pilots obviously falls within the scope of the embargo.
China's stated position is that it abides strictly by international arms embargoes. Kaltam's family is still reeling from the